My name is Aaron Jones, and I'm the President and CEO of IPS Global Aviation. IPS is a company that truly cares. We put our heart and soul into this organization. We operate 24 hours a day.
What is up, Creative Kill family? This is John Roberts, and we are back with the Creative Kill podcast, and we are on episode 7 this week. And episode 7 is going to be our first Creative Kill exclusive. You want to tell us a little bit about this, Ben?
Definitely. So we actually did an awesome exclusive interview with Russell Edwards, Jack the Ripper historian and author of Naming Jack the Ripper.
Man, that was a great interview today. I got to tell you. So what we're going to do today, guys, is that we're about to show you the interview. We did a remote interview this morning. We're really excited about to show you guys this because it does tell us a lot about what happened with Jack the Ripper.
Gosh, crazy details and backstory. I mean, everything leading up to finding out who Jack the Ripper was in kind of a very puzzled together, very complex way. I mean,
right. It's just it really sounds like something out of a movie because Russell, and just to kind of give you guys a little bit of background, you'll see this in the video, but Russell was he owned a software company, and then he went on like a Jack the Ripper tour, right?
Yeah, basically, yeah. He was giving he was, I think, taking some of his clientele out to lunch or something like that, basically, to one of his favorite spots in the known territory of where Jack the Ripper, all these murders took place. Saw something that was advertisement of some sort. I'm assuming that basically was like advertising Jack the Ripper tour.
Right.
Took the tour and got hooked.
Yeah. That's what happens with true crime, man. You know, it's like once you take that deep dive down into something, and obviously, like I said, I posted this little thing on Instagram this morning. You know, he was kind of the first notorious serial killer. You know, he's kind of, I call it the OG serial killer. You know what I mean? So, so anyway, well, what we're gonna do right now is we're gonna go ahead and get to the clip or get to the video of the interview. We want to thank you guys for participating, but right now we want to thank our sponsors, which are 519 Studios, Wolf Krusemark Arts, Psych Society, and Doughboy Cookies, and we also want to just throw a special thanks out to everybody that helped us produce this episode. This has been an adventure on this one, you know, Ben?
Definitely.
All right, well, here we go, everybody. We hope you enjoy. What's up, everybody? This is John Roberts with Creative Kill and the Creative Kill podcast. And today, I'm your host, John Roberts, and
Ben Marshall.
And today we are joined by author, historian, and Jack the Ripper guru, Russell Edwards. How you doing today, Russell?
Hi, guys. I'm doing really well. Thanks for having me.
Great, Russ. Well, is it okay if I call you Russ or Russell?
Of course,
sorry.
yeah.
Okay, Russ. Yeah. Well, we're going to break right into this. So I guess our first question is, we want the whole story. How did you get into this? How'd you write the book? And then the shawl. We'll get into the shawl and stuff here in a little bit, but we want to know how you got started. So tell everybody a little bit about yourself right now, and and go ahead and plug the book, and then tell us just the history behind you and this entire situation. So go ahead.
Well, sure. So my life was nothing to do with this. A few decades ago, I got introduced to the East End in 1989. And a friend of mine called Andy lived in Bethnal Green, which is very close. And we used to visit the bagel shop, which is in Brick Lane. So it's in the area. Andy introduced me to Brick Lane, and it's full of curry houses. And from Merseyside, it's sort of our passion to eat Indian food. It's fantastic. And I fell in love with the area straight away. And not most of my life, nearly all of my life, I've just always migrated to the East End. And I just love the East End. And all through the 90s, I had a software company, And I used to take all our corporate clients for curries and show them the flavors and sights and sounds these stems. And then it wasn't until I watched the film From Hell with Johnny Depp.
We're going to ask you about that.
Yeah. So it was that changed it really. And it was this thing, hang on a minute, Jack the Ripper in this area. Sort of, I've been here so long, been there 11 years, And I went on a tour and I realized very quickly, and most people on my tours do as well, is I'd been in this area and walking in his footsteps and in the victim's footsteps all that time without realizing. And that's really was the sort of, oh my, I've been pulled to this area for some really weird reason. And I mentioned that in the book. Anyway, on the Monday, so that was a Friday, saw the film, Saturday went on the tour. And on the Monday, I called Scotland Yard because that's the type of person I am. And I said, where can I access these files? And they said, believe it or not, any of us, any member of the public can go to the National Archives in Kew, take some forms of ID and a pencil, and you can access the case files. That's exactly what I did.
Wow.
And then the story became real. This sort of historic 100-odd years ago story, that sort of this fantasy, the misty, foggy lights of Whitechapel with this, this Dickensian top hat character with a Gladstone bag and cape, that all became real. And because I'd loved these things so much, I thought, well, I'm going to have a little go with this. And so I started to play Hunt the Ripper, like so many people have over generations. Yeah, but I realized quite quickly, you can't. There was no evidence that it's lovely to read. It's lovely to dive into that world, but there's nothing there that would ever give you the name. So I went back to my regular life, and at that time I had care homes, a young family, so I was just getting on with my life. And then literally, it's round about now, 18 years ago. It was in March 2007. My mum called me and she said, "Did you know there's a shawl for sale that's meant to be from the fourth Ripper murder, that of Catherine Eddowes?"
Okay. I read that yesterday, yeah.
Yeah, so curiously enough, I used to live in Newmarket, which is in Suffolk, so the east of England. And where the auction house was is in Bury St Edmunds, which is not, it's about half an hour away. So they had an open day on the shore. So I vividly remember going to see it. And this guy sort of looked a bit clueless, sort of, he really didn't know what he had and he sort of how to hold it. And I could see it was very old. That's very obvious. And you could see the pattern of Michaelmas daisies. But more importantly, you can see the blood on there. That's plain as the nose on your face. Wow. So then I thought, well, my then wife said, "You're not having that." And I had to find a reason to buy it. So the pattern on the shawl is the key to this. And that was Michaelmas daisies. Now, you get lots of people saying, well, it's not in her possessions. No, Catherine Eddowes is the only one as well that was curiously documented all the possessions, but the shawl wasn't there because the shawl was taken before she was taken to the mortuary. It was gone already. But there are 13 newspaper reports describing this Michaelmas daisies garment. So I looked up Michaelmas daisies, and they're just little flowers that come out in September. But Michaelmas is the key to, that changed my life. Now, Michaelmas is an Eastern Orthodox Christian celebration and Western Christian celebration, celebrated on two specific dates of the year, the 29th of September and the 8th of November. They're the dates he went out and he murdered 3 of his 5 victims.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So that's really where it started for me. Okay. And then, so I ended up buying it, and I asked Scotland Yard because what their opinion was of the shawl, because the shawl had been in Scotland Yard Crime Museum all through the 90s, but they gave it back to the original owner. Mm-hmm. And when I told them what I've just told you, the curator guy called Alan McCormack was blown away, and he said, "Russ, I don't even know why they do these tours, write these films, documentaries. We've always known the identity of Jack the Ripper," and he gave me the name there and then. So even before I actually bought the shawl, I knew who Jack the Ripper was.
Wow. Yeah. And that was Kosminski?
Yeah, Aaron. He goes, his actual words were, "I don't know why that, we've always known the identity of Jack the Ripper. It was Aaron Kosminski." And just like that, he gave me the name. Then I asked Alan, could he tell me more? Obviously, someone tells you who Jack the Ripper was from Scotland Yard, you're going to go, tell me. It didn't work. He basically said, go away. You can find out you can basically unravel it yourself, but I'll help you. Yeah, you can. Anyone can, but people refuse to see the truth. Anyway, he helped me along the way, and the significant point was the identification and who the eyewitness was, which I worked out. And then that was it. That I was on this journey. Of course, being very old, the shawl, I realised that we needed to do DNA. And most people, again, I get asked this all the time, what about the contamination? We don't know who held it. When I got asked to take part in a documentary about Frederick Bailey Deming, who was an evil man himself, there was an ancient DNA specialist called Dr. Jori Lohalainen. And that's where my journey with Jori started. And that was in 2011, I think. Now, I said to Jori, the documentary is we're going to be in about 2 hours work. The actual analysis took 4 years. That's how fastidious Jori is.
Wow.
Yeah, that's 4 years.
That's a long time.
Yeah, it certainly is. And the problem we had was contamination, because we didn't know who'd held that shawl over the centuries, you know. So Jori came up with a unique, that he invented a vacuuming technique that's non-invasive, so you wouldn't even know when he took the samples on the shawl. And he managed to get uncontaminated DNA that was embedded in the weave of the shawl. So we bypassed the surface contamination.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I know. You know what? His work is cutting edge, and the barrister that we're working with now, he's got to do a PhD in biochemistry, and he understands the science. And he said, this is cutting edge. Jori likes to call it bleeding edge, but that's what Jori did. And of course, he had me hooked, and both of us were hooked. Now, before he got the uncontaminated DNA, he looked at the evidence on the shawl. So we analysed it for a day. And on there is arterial blood spatter consistent with slashing. There's evidence of split body parts, and there was a deposit of semen on the shawl. But originally, we thought it was her shawl, and we knew she was drunk that night, and she was arrested for being drunk, and we knew she had no money. So we thought she'd sold the body, and that was just from a customer.
Right. Yeah.
So that's how it started. So when Jori got the uncontaminated DNA, he said to me, I've done the hard part. You do the easy part. Go and find me a direct female descendant of the fourth victim, Catherine Eddowes, and get a DNA. Well, that's like, you might as well just ask me to just go and fly a rocket to the moon and build it myself, you know. Yeah. But I did. There's a documentary called Jack the Ripper, Find My Past. And on there is a direct female, it's got to be down the female line, and her name's Karen Miller. And she's the lady I'm representing in the courts. Anyway, Karen was very happy to give me a sample, and we did get a match with Karen's DNA, with the DNA that Jori got from the blood on the shawl that was from the uncontaminated sample. So we were, well, I'm sure you can imagine, elated. It did take a couple of years then. Now I was ready to write the book, and it would have been called Jack the Ripper, the Eddowes Shawl. And all I did was prove that we've got an artifact that is nothing in existence of the Ripper case that exists like this. Nothing at all. No material evidence. So my agent said, well, you've got to go further than this, Russ. There is a vested interest. This is an industry. People make a lot of money. Documentary companies make a lot of money. There was one called Harry Hyams just recently on the Discovery Channel. They like to keep turning over a new suspect every couple of years to keep their sort of toe in the water.
Yeah, to keep the story going. Right. You know,
exactly. So what they don't want is they don't want this to be solved, because there's no more Jack the Ripper business for them. So anyway, my agent said to me, go further. And we decided to predate the shawl. So because, of course, we wanted to make sure it wasn't a modern day forgery. I mean, you can clearly see that, but we wanted to prove it. And so Jori, I did a lot of work with researchers with that. And then we did what was called mass spectrometry with a scientist called Dr. Faz Ismail. Now, that one piece of analysis changed the direction of the investigation. What it was Faz determined that the dye on the shawl, the blue dye, was water soluble. So if it was out in inclement weather, raining, the dye would have run, and there's no evidence of that at all.
Yeah.
He said that the dye came from St. Petersburg in northern Russia. So this is an Eastern European garment. So we know that Kosminski was Jewish, came over from Poland. And then finally said this would never have been owned by a street prostitute because it's expensive silk. This would have been owned by an upper class or upper middle class family.
Oh,
And not that it's not you have to read the book to understand. But one thing that I'll divulge to you exclusively, that the family were wealthy.
Okay.
That they had money. So then we realised then, in which case, if that had no link to Catherine Eddowes, other than being by a body at the scene of the murder, the only other person that would have left the shawl at that murder would have been the Ripper himself.
Right.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So then, if that was the case, then the semen on the shawl wasn't from a customer from Catherine Eddowes. It would have come from him.
Mhm.
So if we get the sample, if we can get DNA from that, we've got DNA of Jack the Ripper.
Right. Yeah, 100%.
So we did. So again, this was another genius scientist called Dr. David Miller, who's a sperm head analyst. And what we got was what's called, we got genomic DNA from the epithelial sloughing of a technical word. I always say it's from the semen. It's not. It's from, so when the ejaculation comes out, it takes skin cells with it from our doodahs. And in that's where we got the cells from.
Wow. That's incredible.
That's crazy.
That day was, I'll never forget it. Yari called me at 5:30. He said, "We've got cells. We've got it." You know, but they only managed to get 18 cells. And then I'm saying, "Well, that's great, isn't it?" And what I'm telling you now is, I don't really tell on interviews, but this is one of my final ones that I'm going to do at the moment. That a pinhead covers about 200,000 skin cells. Could go on a pinhead. We've got 18.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh,
So that was
Jeez.
it was a nervous time for it all. But again, my faith in Yari has always been there and will always be. So he managed to what's called amplify, which is like photocopy the cells. So overnight he created a million cells. So we had more than enough to do the work.
Okay.
Now, what I needed to do, this was the 12th of December 2012, when this all happened. We needed to exhume it, because you can get the pulp inside a tooth and you can get DNA from that, and it can go back hundreds of years. Unfortunately, the synagogue that owns the cemetery where he's buried wouldn't allow us to exhume him. So we did the very next best thing, which Yari said to me, this is 2013. He said to me, "Russ, if you've got a sister," and he did, her name was Matilda, "find me a direct female descendant of her," which is even harder because we didn't even know, you know.
Right.
It took me 10 months to find her. She gave me a sample. 10 months. So imagine, it's sort of the beginning of the year. This was 2013 for me, and for 10 months I did nothing but try and find this person.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you found her, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's a very few, because I'm not permitted to. Well, I've given my word. I know thoroughly.
Yeah, no. We don't. Yeah, we totally agree with that.
But there's a lot of very big coincidences with her and her great grandmother that were really astronomical when we discussed it, and she didn't know it was me that told her, and I was blown away myself. Anyway, so then the hunt was on. So we were in the labs, and the descendants, she was on the phone to us every day. She was literally metaphorically hand in hand with me as we went through this 4-month journey. And then it was about the third Friday in February 2014, about 8 o'clock, Yari texted me and he says, "Go and check your inbox." So my heart is obviously pounding. I knew we were close. And as I run to my office, I realised I spent the best part of £1 million and 14 years of my life. But when you're in that hole, when you're there, everything else is obscured. Only a handful of people knew what we were doing, and we very much lived in a bubble. And what I saw in that inbox was a direct match with the descendants' DNA, with the DNA that we got from the semen on the shawl, that we placed at the murder scene of Catherine Eddowes. So we nailed it. There you go.
Talk about putting the puzzle together. I mean, wow.
Yeah, you did. You did. Yeah, you should. You should be the. You should work for Scotland Yard.
I should do.
Yeah.
I've just literally, this is an exclusive, but I've literally started on the third cold case in the last 2 weeks. So I've done another cold case and solved that, but I'm not allowed to talk about it at all because I'm under contract.
Okay.
But the third one is one over your side of the water, and I'm really excited to get started on that one.
Oh, really?
It's a big one. It's a big one.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's fantastic.
Heck yeah.
You know, we've got. It's funny because I watch I don't know if it was on, but there was a Netflix series called The Dark Tourist, and it is about people that are infatuated with true crime and stuff like that. And it's funny because one of our biggest tourist destinations is actually in Wisconsin, where Jeffrey Dahmer. I mean, you know who Dahmer was, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, yeah.
And so I see when you were talking about your ripper tours and stuff like that, it's kind of a big business, it gets there. But I wanted to ask you about Kosminski real quick. So what was his occupation?
So
Do you know
of
that?
course they needed through the murders there was two coroners, and one said he had to have anatomical knowledge and the other didn't, and the other said he didn't.
Okay.
Now, when Kosminski was taken into the asylum at Colney Hatch, his occupation was hairdresser or barber surgeon. So they had anatomical knowledge.
Wow.
Okay.
That's cool. That's cool. Good. Man.
So are all these details that you just described to us like wrapped up in your book as well? I mean, is there anything else you will kind of learn from your book?
Oh, in the new book, the Jack the Ripper, the definitive reveal. There's another. So what I've told you, that was the end of 2014, and in the second book is another 10 years. We've taken it even further.
Oh wow,
Oh man.
Yeah.
Is that book's out too right now?
That's what's the one you got behind? Yeah, it's this
okay.
one.
Name Jack the Ripper is this. So this is the 2014 book, correct?
Yeah, it's this one, the new one.
Okay. Awesome. Well, I want to.
That one.
Yeah, we're gonna connect with you in a little bit. I need a signed copy from you, man. I'll make sure. That's
No problem.
great.
No
That's
problem.
fantastic.
So if you like, I'd like to just explain about these
go ahead.
scientific
please.
knowledge, the knowledge you must have had. If we take Catherine Eddowes, it was the murder was in Mitre Square. So I told you my story, but this story now has become more about the victims. It should be about the victims. So that's Mary Ann or Polly Nichols, Annie Chapman or Dark Annie. There's Elizabeth Stride or Long Liz, Catherine Eddowes, she was also known as Kate Conway, and then Mary Jane Kelly or Mary Jeanette Kelly. But if we take back the actual knowledge of being able to do what he did, he committed a ritualistic murder, which we know there were 11 Whitechapel murders and 5 were attributed to him. The first Whitechapel murder occurs from this interview date it starts next week, and that was Emma Smith. Now that was more of a brutal attack on a woman. The next one was Martha Tabram, and she was stabbed 39 times. But they don't link that one to the canonical 5 as they're known, because the MO was different. But the way that they were ritualistically murdered, and I don't know if you want me to explain a little bit about that.
Please.
Okay, so basically there was the fact that he not just cut the throats, as the murders escalated, he tried to cut the head off. With Annie, with Catherine, he didn't have time with Liz because he was interrupted. And for Mary Jane Kelly, the worst. And still, I've seen Adama, his posed victims. I've seen how he's took the photographs. For me, Mary Jane Kelly is the most gruesome picture I've ever seen of all serial killer investigations I've ever done. But the actual anatomical knowledge, imagine he took a kidney, he took a uterus for Catherine Eddowes, he cut her throat, he did a facial mutilation, he threw intestines over his shoulder, and he did that in a window of about 4 minutes.
Oh gosh.
In the dark.
Yeah, he knew what he was doing. Yeah.
That is.
Yeah, when you see the crime scenes, it becomes very apparent that this was a very sadistic maniac killer, but a very calculated one as well. Because if we take a step back to Elizabeth Stride, so the night of the double event, he murdered 2 inside and out, Long Liz and Catherine Eddowes. He was interrupted murdering Elizabeth Stride because he didn't perform his ritual, but he did cut her throat. Within an hour, Catherine Eddowes was discovered. Now, if you put your head in the side of a serial killer, he's got to have the calmness to convince a woman, because he's just literally, imagine, fired up or just murdering somebody, and then he's got to have that calmness to convince another woman to go into another dark alley with him, which he did. It's these things that when you live the story like I've done, these things become more apparent than just the superficial. And then, but you look at the 5 murders, and we're doing a very big tribute to the victims in 2 months' time, called Giving Back, where we're going to unveil blue plaques commemorating the lives of the victims. So we're really looking forward to that, and we're linking with a homeless charity and a place called Refuge, and that's to do with domestic violence against women. So we're going to be raising money for these charities, and so these women's names are more celebrated. We're celebrating the lives, and the money that can come in will be going to, or part of it will be going to those that suffer like these women did back in 1888.
Gosh,
that's fantastic.
That is.
Thank you.
Russ, I got a quick question for you. I've nowhere done the extensive research that you've done, but you mentioned the 2 other murders that weren't associated directly with the 5 because of the ritualistic patterns and things of that nature. And my little bit of research I did, I found that they were supposedly like a total of 5 other murders that might have been linked to
6. Yeah, there were 11. Yeah, there were 11 murders. The first one was Emma Smith. She was attacked on the night of the 3rd of April, which is next week. And that was more, there were these high-risk gangs that used to bully these women into giving them protection money. And I think it was more to do with taking her livelihood, because where she was attacked, which I just for the interview, it was between her legs, and they basically, it was completely horrible. But they left her for dead. And she managed to survive a couple of days. She died the day after. But when we get to Martha Tabram was the 6th of August 1888. Now, coincidentally, the very first ever showing of the UK version of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde with Richard Mansfield was shown at the Lyceum on the 4th of August, so 2 days before. Now, if you ever watch that film, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson, you'll see a striking similarity between this story and that story. Beyond, wow, that's just too freaky. So the fact of taking a potion, actually schizophrenia. We know Kosminski was schizophrenic. So it always begs the question: being stabbed 39 times, which is what poor Martha was, and she was 39 years of age. Was that his first attempt? In fact, tomorrow there's a woman called Ida Wilson that also had a throat cut, but she survived. Was this one of his? So there was another one a month ago, where in 1888, where Frances Coles, I think, and she again, she was attacked, violently stabbed the same way as Martha. She survived. They let her out of hospital, and then she died. And the coroner said she died of natural causes. So she's not even linked to it. You're like, hang on a minute.
Oh my gosh.
But you've got to remember, this is 1888. They're really not where we are now. So there's these precursor attacks on women, which we know that serial killers do. Peter Sutcliffe, the Yorkshire Ripper, did. Then we've got Emma Smith. Then we've got Martha, and then 3 weeks after Martha, we've got the canonical 5, and that was a 10-week period.
Man, this is great. Russ, are they planning? Have they ever like approached you about doing a documentary, or have you done anything like that we need to watch and see? Because I would love it. This is great.
So I just literally am about to sign a contract with a documentary company, and under that contract, I won't be given any more interviews. So you are literally one of the final official interviews I'll ever be given.
Thank you so much. We're so blessed for having
Thank you, sir.
But it'll be. I don't think I know I won't be given another interview. I will for something else that we're doing, but it will be not like this. And I won't be given an interview for at least another 18 months from today.
Gosh.
So you got me at the very end one.
All right.
We lucked out.
We did luck out. Well, we only have a couple more minutes left, Russ, with you. So I just wanted to ask you real quick. So we do a little segment. First of all, we are very impressed by everything that you just told us. I am so glad we got to talk to you about this case. But at Creative Kill, so we focus on everything true crime, supernatural, and horror. And we always like to ask our guests. So, Russ, what is your favorite horror movie? Do you have one?
I do. My favorite of all time is An American Werewolf in London.
Oh yes, that's my top three, man.
Yeah,
Me too.
yeah, my all-time favorites, and I'm a member of the real fan group of American Werewolf in London.
Oh my
on
gosh,
Facebook.
you need to send me that link because I want to get in that group too, then Russ.
Yeah.
Because I'm a huge werewolf guy.
You look it up, American Werewolf in London real fan group. There's only like 900 members. It's a small collect.
It doesn't matter. I still want to.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. I love it. Yeah, yeah.
That's great. That's fantastic. Well, that's good. And then we wanted to ask you too. I mean, obviously you had already mentioned it, but From Hell. I mean, what do you think about that now compared to what you found? You know, because From Hell was such a big movie back when it came out. You know,
Yeah.
obviously it was Johnny Depp, but
yeah, no. I even though you get the main character as an Englishman, and then you get the main victim, well, the Mary Kelly, both Americans doing English accents. It's quite fun. But apart from that, I really love the film. I've described his ritual of just eating the blood with the bloodied meat, if you like, or raw, rare meat. I've done a different version of his ritual, which is, I think, more realistic. And obviously, it was never Sir William Gull, because Sir William Gull was in his 70s and he'd already had 2 strokes. So it definitely wasn't him, but I really love the film.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, I love Heather Graham. I love Johnny Depp, but I think it's funny because it is they're playing 2 British people, and then a lot of times we get a lot because Ben and I are actors as well.
Yeah.
So
okay.
Yeah, so I was in Better Call Saul. Ben was in like Logan. We've done a bunch of little stuff.
Are you in Logan?
Yeah.
Wow.
We really enjoy the true crime aspect of some things. But I gotta tell you, it's funny because when they come over here, we get a lot of actors from the UK that play Americans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, well, Russell, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. Everybody, just to let you know, this is Russell Edwards. His book is Naming Jack the Ripper. He's got more stuff coming out. We will attach all of our links in our YouTube page and our bio on this interview. Russell, thank you so much today for joining us.
Thank you, Russell. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. It's been a sincere pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
Okay, great. All right. Creative Kill, thank you so much. Where everybody has a killer experience. Have a great day.
Okay, that was a hell of an interview, wasn't it, man?
Yeah, man.
I'm going to tell you guys. So for you fans at Creative Kill, we've been working on this interview for several weeks now, and Russell was an amazing guest this morning.
Yes. Awesome. Russell, again, thank you, sir. Really do seriously appreciate your time. You were awesome.
Absolutely. And for us being the very last interview that he's going to do, that was my big thing. It was like when we booked this show, I did not expect that from Russell. I didn't expect to hear that from him. And and he even says it in the interview, guys, he's got some more stuff going on. He can't talk to us about much of it, but behind the scenes, I got to tell you, Russell was an amazing guy. And let's get into this Jack the Ripper thing too, man. So first off, he opened up, like, basically he got attracted to it. We were talking earlier, he went on lunch, but he watched that movie From Hell.
Yep.
And if you guys don't know From Hell, I think it was in 2007 is what he said. And it stars Johnny Depp and Heather Graham. And it's about, Jack the Ripper and who they thought Jack the Ripper was back then, wasn't it?
Yes, exactly. They kind of thought it was more of a somebody in high society, kind of aristocrat, possibly with ties to the Knights Templar and whatnot.
Yeah.
And evidently got it all wrong.
No, well, they didn't. And then what's crazy is that so if you guys heard in the interview, the gentleman that they've identified as Jack the Ripper got the DNA evidence from. His name was Aaron Kosminski.
Kosminski,
and he was a barber.
Yep.
And so back then, when you were a barber, I guess you were a surgeon too, because you're good with some edge tools, you know, some pointy things, you know. And so and then just the way he explained everything, just the kills, and then just, you know, he sounds like he's very vested in this, and I'm very excited to hear that he's actually trying to do something for the families. I mean, this was a long time ago, so it's not like it's something that's happened recently, but I'm sure that those people that are related to those, you know, those women that were murdered, they you know, they do hold a historical significance. You know what I mean? And so and I got to tell you, there's been people that try to debunk Russell's, you know, his theory, but I don't. Dude, it's science.
Yeah, it sounds completely, I mean, just accurate. For lack of a better way to explain it.
Right.
I mean, just the science that went into it, the time and effort that went into over the course of 4 years.
Right.
I mean, just, gosh, it just, I don't really see any way that it can kind of debunk or, you know.
No, I think it's done. I think he found the killer. He even said Scotland Yard knew who the killer was. Yeah. And by the way, I got to tell you guys this man, we talked to him a little bit off screen. He should have worked for Scotland Yard. I said that in the interview, man. He is all about it. And I love when you meet people, and I mentioned that Dark Tourist, but you meet these people that get so dedicated to some case and they actually break it. You know what I mean? And that was the great thing about Russell, is that first off, he's a great guy. And then second of all, it's like he knew his shit. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I mean, obviously he wrote a book. Yeah. You know, and again, the book, guys, is called Naming Jack the Ripper. Yeah. And like he said, he's got a documentary that he just signed on for. So I can't wait to see that.
God, it's going to be good.
Yeah.
To actually, you know, put a kind of a face, if you will, to all the background story he was telling us about, the science into it, and just, you know, that shawl and whatnot, what that looks like, if you haven't already seen it on the pictures. But, you know, just,
we'll put them up right now. We're going to put up the picture of the shawl. We'll put up the picture of some victims. We're not going to try to get it taken down. So we can't put up too much blood and gore, but they actually do have some photographs that they are, I don't know if it's reimaginings or whatever it is of the victims, you know. So, and what's funny is that, you know, and then when he talked about, and we're going to jump in a little bit of horror stuff here, but he talked about Jekyll and Hyde, you know, and how that was kind of related to the Jack the Ripper case, you know. And I could kind of see that, because obviously we've got into this with Jim's episode. Remember, we were talking about where Jim he said about the exorcism stuff. It's mental health, man. So, you know, obviously he said this gentleman was schizophrenic. He was diagnosed, and I don't know if they diagnosed people back then. And I don't know if that's like a real diagnosis. Usually they thought people were crazy, you know?
Pretty much.
But so that's and then the other thing, it's the science behind it. Remember, it's like when he talks about the cells and how, what was it? What did he say? It was like 200,
like 200,000 could fit on the top of a pin.
Like a needle,
like a ballpoint pen, basically.
Yeah. So it's 200, and they only had 18.
So they had to basically like copy over these 18 enough times so where we could actually get enough of that DNA to, you know, do the whole, you know, process of basically comparing it to somebody's DNA who's alive today, who's related to this guy.
Right.
I mean,
and it's such crazy technology, because we see these shows where like celebrities go on and they get their lineage or their family tree done and stuff like that. It's like now all these cold cases, you know, all these cold cases, they have the technology now where they can track it back so far, you know, and it was really great of, I want to say, what's her name? Mary Kate, or the woman that was murdered. Anyway, I'm sorry, you can fact check me on that, but we'll go back. We'll reference the interview, but it was her family that actually participated in this.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and I think that we're gonna finally hear. You know, we could just check the box that this guy's the guy.
Yep.
You know, and I understand that there's a lot of people out there that could be skeptics of this, but I think Russell says this in the interview. It's kind of the tourism industry that wants to keep the lore alive.
Right.
You know, and I mentioned that in other places because there's a documentary it's a docuseries on Netflix that, like I said, it's called The Dark Tourist, and there's a lot of people that make a lot of money off these things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like Dahmer, like I said, in Wisconsin. Right. And then you have, you know, I'm sure every other place that has some kind of, you know, ghost tour, New Orleans or New York or some kind of creepy town. You know, Vegas, I know, has a bunch of them too. But, you know, I think he solved it.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I understand that, you know, a lot of that industry in terms of the mystery behind Jack the Ripper, that's part of the lore, right? I mean,
yeah, that's part of the fun.
It's like, you know, so, and it's understandable, but at the same time, you know, bringing light to the true identity of him, I don't think it's going to diminish, you know, that too much. Just be honest. I mean,
no, because people they know the story, man. Like I said, he's the OG. He's the first.
Yeah.
He's the first serial killer that we know of that was documented on record.
Yes.
And obviously it went out in papers and stuff back then, and it was a pretty, you know, pretty new thing to hear about somebody killing a number of women. And then he calls the 5 women, or is it 4 or 5 women? Yeah, so he has the 5 that they've confirmed that was Kosminski.
Yes, exactly.
And then what is there, another 6?
Another 6 that he was referencing that, you know, might have been Jack kind of practicing his craft, as it were, or getting more progressive too,
right,
to the point where, you know, to the state where, you know, it became such a gruesome kind of scene, basically.
Well, when he mentions is the first kill, like, I think one of them survived.
Yep.
Because she got away. But when he mentions the first, that's what happens with a lot of serial killer cases, is that the first 2 or 3 murders are usually pretty messy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
They
Because
don't know what they're doing yet. Yeah.
Well, they don't know what they're doing. They're not comfortable with it. I'm sure they're just, you know, they do it, and then it's kind of like practicing your craft. You just get better and better and better at it now. Yeah. And it's you know, like I said, it's this was so long ago. You know, it's like
100 years ago.
That's wild to think about, that, isn't it?
It is, and it's crazy to think about how, you know, at the time, the newspaper, right, the press, you know, it was the way you got the news, right?
Yeah.
And then it was one of the first cases in history also where a serial killer sent in a supposed note to the press,
right,
which drived up, you know, the volume of just, oh my God, is this going on in our streets? You know, there.
Right. I mean, I think the next time I heard it was like the Zodiac did it or whatever.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? It's such a cool and intriguing case because, you know, obviously the violence and all that stuff. And then I got to tell you, it's also the time period too. True. That time period was really cool because like everybody's wearing all that, you know, it's like everything was almost formal gear, you know? And so, and then and then that was the other thing, Ben, that he talks about. So when we talk about the Shaw, that's the Shaw, when he talks about in the interview, was the piece of evidence that they got the DNA from, right?
Right.
But the Shaw was from, didn't he say like a wealthy family? Like a prostitute wouldn't have had that Shaw. So it obviously came from Jack, and Kosminski's family was, you know, pretty well off at the time for those times. Yeah. So yeah, man, I got to tell you, this was a very, as far as an exclusive, guys, we can't get any better than this.
It's gonna be hard to top this one.
Right. I mean, we're gonna bring on a lot of different things, or a lot of different people that have different stories of true crime, supernatural, not so much horror, but we're gonna start taking dives into, you know, different cases and stuff like that. But we got, when I say exclusive, we got the last interview, which I got to tell you, man, when he told me that, I almost busted out in tears. I was just like, what? I was like, I cannot believe this happened to us.
Yeah, seriously.
You know, and it's really funny. It's because you know, I saw this News Nation, and I forwarded that to you. Remember that News Nation clip? And it says, you know, basically that he was 100% identified. And And then I sent it to you, and I just PM or DM'd Russell on Instagram, and he immediately got back with me.
That's awesome.
I know. And so once he did, we booked the interview, and we had a couple of, scheduling conflicts and whatever, but we got to it this morning.
Yeah.
We woke up this morning early. We were up at 4:30 in the morning because he's in the UK.
Right.
And it's like 1:00 his time there. We didn't want to keep him up too late, but I got to tell you, the guy was nothing short of amazing, guys. He was, we
such a good sport.
He was a good sport, and and again, kind soul. We can't wait for his documentary to come out. You guys need to check out his book. It's called Naming Jack the Ripper. Anything we can do to help support Russell, we're going to do here moving forward, because I got to tell you, Russell was a great guest for us.
So genuine.
Yeah, and he was so genuine. So genuine.
Super.
And I've just got to bust this about the interview. So Ben and I were a little nervous this morning. Okay, guys. And Russ, we were a little nervous talking to you. I'm actually, my hair is standing up on my arms right now because just thinking about it. But he took control of that interview and just went.
Yeah. Gave us so much good information. So much. I mean, just awesome stuff that I didn't know about.
Right. And I felt like I was fulfilled with what we wanted to hear. You know what I mean? It's like when you get guests on like this caliber of somebody that's done all of this work. Yeah. All of this work on this case, it really pays off when you're interviewing people and they're really good at what they do.
Definitely. I mean, I felt like all we were missing is like a bowl of popcorn, basically. Like, because we were just so just enthralled in what Russell was saying. So Russell, again, great to have you on, sir. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. So everybody, that's about it for this show, because it was a Creative Kill exclusive. We didn't kill anybody this episode, but we will get back to that. We'll get back to the fun stuff as well, but we want to bring, so Creative Kill, our brand is, we want to bring a little bit of fun and a little bit of edge.
Right.
A little bit of horror, true crime, supernatural stuff, but it's good to talk about these things that, especially history. I love talking about history. I love the past lore. I love anything serial killer. Anything serial killer. I've always kind of had that bug for that stuff, reading books, and obviously when you take deep dives down in the internet, the rabbit hole. It's funny to think about how, people, they make all these conspiracy theories and all this stuff, but this guy, it's different. It's different with this interview with him. So
definitely, I mean, it gave us a chance to see, modern forensic science basically solve a murder free from over 100 years ago.
Yeah,
I mean, that in itself is awesome. Like,
yeah, we need to start getting more cold cases.
I know, right?
I mean, I got to tell you though, the guy must have. The one question I didn't ask him, and maybe this could be a follow-up interview at some point in time after he finishes his documentary. Right. But, I wonder how much money he spent on doing all of this, because, I mean, I think he self-funded the whole thing. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And that's, because everything he did, but he did team up with that science team, and they put everything together. And we did not read the book. I'll let you guys know. I'm gonna read the book now, because I'm so excited after talking to this gentleman. But in the book, they have color pictures of, like, the actual pictures of the scientists doing the DNA evidence, and that's
pictures of the shawl.
And they have the shawl, they have everything. We're going to put some of them up here on the podcast and show you guys. But again, that was our Creative Kill exclusive today, guys, with historian, author, and Jack the Ripper guru, Russell Edwards.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's about it for this segment, man. I just kind of want to wrap this thing up, but right now, I got to tell, we're going to break into just another little thing, and this is just to kind of close this out. So, a couple of months ago, it's about a month ago, we had a famous New Mexico actor pass away, Gene Hackman.
Yeah.
And we just want to shout out to Gene Hackman. I got on ChatGPT this morning, and I just Googled, I said, please give me any horror movies that Gene Hackman was in. And they sent us one. So this is this clip. Rest in peace, Gene. We loved you. You were an American icon.
Definitely, sir.
We're going to close with this segment, but thank you guys so much. Creative Kill, where the guest always has a killer experience. I'm John.
Always. And I'm Ben.
All right, we're signing off, guys. You guys take care. Have a great day.
Good. Yes, sir. Wait. A toast. A toast to, yes, long friendship.